Hello and welcome to the Friday Focus. We're so excited for you to be here. If you could do us a favor and put your name and where you're from in the comments below. With less than 2 minutes to go, do me a favor and let me know where you're joining us from. Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Friday Focus. And I wanted to apologize if Chris is watching. We had a little audio snafu and we didn't have our awesome roller coaster music. So I do apologize for that. But thank you guys so much for coming in today. I appreciate you coming out to hang and hear about this week's photo news. And there's just so much news going on. It was hard to pare everything down for all the topics that are going on. It's been a busy, busy week. So let's go ahead and get into it. I wanted to let you know that we do have a podcast. It's called the Talking Pixels Podcast. We actually just dropped a new episode this morning. So in that episode, if I remember correctly, it was a second half of what we talked about with like photographers and what you should have on your website. So again, if you're looking to take your photography hobby to a career to a full-time job, definitely take a look at the Talking Pixels podcast. There's no sales, there's no gear talk. It's all about the business of photography. So if that's something that interests you, if you just do a Google search for the Talking Pixels podcast or in any of the podcatchers that you use, you'll be able to find that. So just a little bit, just some housekeeping notes. I want to just kind of let you know what's going on here at the store. So we are open at the store from 10 to 7 Monday through Friday, and 10 to 5 on Saturday. So if you do need absolutely anything, don't hesitate to come on in. We are here to help you. And also, if you don't feel comfortable coming in, that's totally fine. We get it. You can take advantage of our curbside pickup. We're still doing that, as well as free shipping on thousands of items at our website. So what can you expect in store? Like if you are going to be coming in, what can you expect? Well, first and foremost, we're doing our best to keep everything safe and clean. We are using a ton of disinfectant to make sure that there are none of those corona germs on the cameras that you are testing and trying. So we do our best to do that. We have hand sanitizer set up for when you come in. I use that all the time. Our team members, we're making sure that they're symptom free and wearing masks. So we're trying to do our part to make it a comfortable shopping experience when you do come into the store. So I want to talk quickly, just what are our goals for today? First and foremost is to update you on the photography related news that you might have missed. And like I said, it's been a pretty busy week. There's been a lot of announcements. There's been a lot of changes with companies, and I want to take a deep dive into some of those things. And I will warn you, you might want to buckle in. This is going to be a little bit longer of a show than normal. We have some changes that are coming, and I'm excited for those. So another thing is I want to pull you away from the fear, uncertainty, and the doubt, or the FUD, as I like to call it. There's a lot of things going on that are outside of our control, and if I can do my part to pull you away from those, even if it is for a half hour to an hour, then that's my goal. I want to make sure, that's how I know that I've met my goal, is just to have you in here talking about a hobby that you love, known as photography. I also want to get you motivated to try something new. And that's why on the Photo Focus, or on the Friday Focus, it's not just about the news. It's also about tutorials and rumors. And, my goal is to get you outside of your comfort zone to try something new, because who knows, that might be something where you can maybe profit from it in the future. So let's change it up a bit. And like I said, there's going to be some changes that are coming soon or are here, I guess, that are coming to the show. And the biggest change is the fact that, you're not just going to be seeing me in these shows. We're actually going to have a co-host. Hello, Mr. Mike Vrobel. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, TJ.
Excellent. Well,
glad to be here.
Agreeing to do this. I was looking for someone to kind of co-host, if you will, because I want these to become more conversational and then save them as a, podcast in the future. So in order to do that, I want to have, a little bit longer form discussion. And thank you so much for, agreeing to do this with me. So a little bit about Mike. Let's go ahead and get this up on the screen. If you haven't checked out his website or his Instagram, he does some great food photography. But Mike, tell us a little bit about what you do for work, how you kind of got into the food area, and looking at these photos, like what is your setup for these actual photos? I want to hear from you.
Thanks, TJ. Well, to start, the reason I'm here on this particular podcast, I've been a photography hobbyist since the mid-90s, when I read an Ansel Adams Yosemite book, or I guess looked at the pictures, and immediately ran out and bought a Canon EOS Rebel XS. And I've been a photography hobbyist ever since. Years went by. My day job, I'm a computer programmer. I kind of fell into the food world and started my own food blog, Dad Cooks Dinner, about recipes that a enthusiastic home cook would make. And part of the key parts of a blog is photography. You eat with your eyes, so it's critical to have good pictures. So I started stepping up my photography game for that. And I have bought more cameras than I would like to admit, because I'm also a bit of a gear fanatic. And here I am. My setup is my Fuji X-T4, which I just got from Pixel about a month ago. I've been shooting Fuji for the last few years, and I have my little studio set up in the corner of my living room where I've got my Profoto lights and some tabletop boards and my camera and tripod and everything else you need that I'm running back and forth from the kitchen with bowls and plates and steaks and whatever I need to get a good picture.
I love it. And then actually, when I first started doing food photography, I mentioned it here. You were one of the inspirations behind it because I knew you were, you weren't setting up the shots just to get good photos for Instagram. It was the meals that you were planning and cooking for your family. And that's kind of what I was doing too on my other, the other project that I work on is, just trying to get better with food photography. So I've been, kind of watching your stuff and, it's been an inspiration for me. So thank you so much for joining and doing this. I feel like we're going to be able to have some good conversations about kind of the world around us when it comes to photography. So let's get right into it with our news block. So this is one that this is probably the biggest story of the week, and that is the fact that I like the headline here: Olympus has fallen. And basically, what's going on is Olympus has there's a memorandum of understanding up on all of the sites, whether it's the U.S., whether it's in all the different countries, that they're basically selling the company to a investment firm, JIP, which is actually, I believe, the same company that took over the Vio brand. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens with Olympus going forward. Mike, what are your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen with Olympus going forward? Do you think it's going to be restructured and then it's going to be gone? Do you think this is a good thing for Olympus? What do you think?
Right. Well, it's not a good thing for Olympus, but I'm hoping it's not the end of the world. The JIP private equity, I tend not to trust, but they don't seem like a strip them and dump them by the side of the road and sell them for parts kind of company. The Sony Vaio brand, like you mentioned, they took them over from Sony because Sony didn't want them anymore about 6 years ago, and that brand still exists, and they're still making laptops. They're not quite as high of quality as they were back when Sony was making them, but they're still there. So I think if you are an Olympus shooter and you really love your cameras, this is a good thing. This company is going to try to keep Olympus in business, and they're going to try to keep supporting you. Now, the thing that I worry about is Olympus has been losing a lot of money. What is JIP going to have to do to keep them in business, and how much of their research and development budget is going to dry up because of this while they try to figure out how to make money with Olympus cameras?
And that's what I was thinking too. A couple points there that you make is there's already stuff that's in the pipeline. There has to be. Olympus has stuff in the pipeline. And I don't worry, looking in the next 3 years, I really don't worry about Olympus as a company. There's going to be transition time. There's already been cuts that I've seen, here in the US a couple months ago. So I think that you're going to see a business as usual from Olympus for the following, 1 to 3 years. Now, going 3 years to 5 years, that's where I kind of get a little nervous. The company that bought them, I think, has 150 million in assets, and I believe that's under management. So I was actually just taking a phone call on the way home talking to somebody about this, and that they had mentioned that, so I might need a fact check there. But it doesn't seem like this is a very large, where there's a ton of money. Now, a company could get involved and say, hey, like, we want to do a cash infusion because we see the future of Olympus and we want to keep it going. But time will tell. I mean, I think there's like the 100 to 400. That was one of the lenses they've shown. There's a couple other long lenses that I don't think those are not going to show up. I think that R&D already been invested. That's the hard part, is the research and development and the designs. And that's something that, this company, if they were smart, they would, keep that going. But, out from that, if you're at the helm of Olympus right now or JIP, what do you do with the Olympus camera brand? Do you keep with their focus now? Do you look at their TG line is phenomenal cameras, best underwater cameras that are out there, in my opinion. Do you just take that and run with it? Like, what do you do from this point forward?
Well, I think the problem that Olympus has, and the problem that most camera companies have nowadays, is the rise of the smartphone camera. It has just eaten the low end of the market, and it's only people like us, photography hobbyists, who are buying cameras nowadays. For most people, what's in your phone is good enough. And So I'm hoping that JIP leans into this. Olympus is a good camera system. I've used it a little, not a whole lot, and I've really been tempted by some of their longer wildlife-oriented lenses. It's a really light, to me, light wildlife system. And that's the kind of thing they should lean into. Where can they separate from smartphones? And that's what I worry about. I'm sorry, I forget the name, what you just mentioned, their underwater point and shoot.
Yeah, the TG line.
Yeah, that line worries me. That's just a little too close to what you can get out of a smartphone. And maybe they can figure out some way to differentiate it. But it feels like the interchangeable lens bodies, the OMDs, are where they should put their focus, to me. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the next thing that I saw was, and I don't know if you shared this with me, or if it was one that I had found while just getting things for the episode. But basically, Sony's going to offer free maintenance service for your camera. So we've seen this. We've seen a lot of different things from the camera manufacturers as far as the way that. Oh, did we lock up there? Let me see.
I can still hear you.
Are you seeing the screen?
Oh, yeah, you are frozen.
Uh-oh. Whee.
Ooh.
Try one more.
To give you guys a little behind the scenes while he tries, this particular slide, for some reason, has been giving us a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is, like why. Okay. Yep, it's like freezing halfway through. Okay, so we're just going to talk about it. So basically, Sony is offering free maintenance for service for your camera. So if you do have one of their Alpha line of cameras, they are doing free maintenance, so sensor cleanings, firmware updates, stuff like that. So I think it's good to keep these type of stories in here, although it's not like a ton of news. It's good to show that the camera manufacturers are getting behind creators. You know, they're scrambling to see, you know, what can they do to help people continue to create content, whether that's photo, video, storytelling, whatever it is. I mean, we've seen, you know, Sigma with their shot at home contests. We've seen Fuji and Sony. They're all doing like tech time. So if you want to just reach out for free help, they have that. They've put together tons of resources. They've had, you know, speakers work through the camera stores like we've been doing. So the camera manufacturers are all in on this. They are doing their part to try to, you know, help creators. And I think that's just awesome, you know, just to talk, you know, as far as like our industry that we have, even though it seems like it's such a vast industry, you know, it's a very small industry that they can do stuff like this and they can help each other out.
I agree.
Cool. So let's see if we could try this slide. Oh, there we go. It's looking, this one actually worked. So Panasonic's new $799 G100 vlogging camera will also shoot vertical video for Instagram. So the headline there is, you know, that Panasonic did come out with a new camera, and we've been talking a little bit about it on our social media channels, Instagram and Facebook, but I have got to go hands-on with this product. And it's funny because we have differing views of this, and I think that's awesome that we can bring two different views to you guys. So I shot with the G100 on Monday. Yeah, Monday and Tuesday. And I got to say, I'm impressed. So I worked at Panasonic, full disclosure, for the last 2 years before coming to Panasonic, or I'm sorry, before coming to Pixel Connection. And so I've shot with all of the Panasonic cameras in depth. I mean, that's all I use day in and day out. That's what I trained on. And I really didn't know anything about this camera at all. I mean, I've heard rumors about it, just like you guys hear rumors. And then when I actually got the camera in my hand, I kind of understood like what people had asked me for as I was a tech rep. And what I mean by that is when Panasonic and Olympus too, when they started this Micro Four Thirds consortium, the idea was smaller, lighter weight mirrorless cameras that you can take anywhere with you. And over the last couple versions and iterations of cameras, I mean, we look at the EM1X, we look at the G9, GH5, you're looking at these full-size, larger cameras, and it's a departure from what the system originally was for. And this is kind of going back to that, going back to their roots. It's a small form factor camera. They have some of the impressive things are the new screen that's on it. It's like super thin, and I think it's a cell phone screen that they put on it, but it's super thin, super lightweight. That's awesome. Amazing still photos. I mean, if you're looking for a small, lightweight, inexpensive, interchangeable lens camera, this is definitely it. I looked it up, and a couple of the other news reports were saying this is actually the smallest interchangeable lens camera with a fully articulating screen. So
Hmm.
is this going to have the specs of the GH5? No. Is it going to have dual card slots? No. Is it going to have, 422 10-bit? No. It does have Vlog. So if you do want to, apply LUTs, or you want to get, more custom looks, you have that ability. But it's meant to me, it's like an everyday camera. It's everything that I love about the LX100 Mark II, which is still to this day one of my favorite cameras, mixed with the interchangeable lens features. Like I love my 8-18, I love my 42.5, and now I can use those lenses on this system. But Mike, what are your thoughts? Because I know in the comments in the show notes, you had some miss the mark type of comments, and I definitely want to hear those as well.
Right. Well, I think this is a good idea by Panasonic. They're leaning into their strengths in video by trying to make a camera oriented towards vloggers. The problem is I shot Panasonic for years. I had a GH5 and a couple of G7s as quick carry around B cameras for video, and I was picturing the G7 became the G85, became the G95. I was picturing the G100 continuing that line. Whereas I think the G100 is really more like a GX85, like you just said, a really lightweight portable camera, but it's missing some of the features that as a vlogger, I think you probably want. I'm not a vlogger. I don't want to be, but they kind of want, I'm assuming they would want in-body image stabilization, and this one only has digital. I'm also assuming that the low battery life is going to be, they made a smaller battery, so it's lighter and portable. That's good. But if you're running around videoing yourself all day on a GorillaPod, you're going to have to switch that battery a lot. So it seems like a good idea. I just worry that they leaned a little too into the small and light for vloggers for it to be useful for vloggers. So
I can talk to a couple of those things. So the battery life, I will admit, so having shot with it, I looked down at the battery meter and it was a little bit lower. So Panasonic does realize this. They're actually doing a free battery promotion that's going on right now. So you get a free extra battery with it. I know that's not the answer to it, but it does have the USB charging. So I like that because, again, if I have just a battery pack, or at any restaurant, I can plug it in. But these are all things I totally agree with you. They're, I'm having to come up with workarounds when in reality, it would have been nice if they would have maybe used the larger size of battery that's in the, like the G7 and the G85 instead of the battery that's in the GX85. And the stabilization. So I definitely agree with you there. I think that that is a hot point that we hear about a lot. We hear about cameras with in-body. I can tell you from just the doing the digital image stabilization and the lens stabilization, it does a pretty good job handheld. If you go to our Facebook page, there's a vertical where I talk a little bit about the vertical video, and that's handheld with their little tripod. And I think it does a pretty good job with it. Not as good as in-body image stabilization would be, but to me, like as we, kind of ponder in the future, if this is a line that they're going to adopt, that does kind of set up the future for the line. I look at like the A6000, for example. They started off with a camera that didn't have the in-body image stabilization. And then from there, they did kind of a good, better, best. And it would be awesome if Panasonic adopts something like that, something where, you do have this baseline kind of price conscious camera. And then maybe they have what would it be, like the G150? I don't know what the name would be, but where they can kind of add that in-body image stabilization. I think that it's setting, they're kind of defining a new product line for them. So I think it'll be interesting to see kind of how that progresses. Another thing I want to talk a little bit about is the Ozo Audio, is what they call it. I don't know if you read up on this at all. So I used exclusively the Ozo Audio in kind of the testing, and we still have the camera here. So one thing, as far as like, if people are wondering like, hey, why isn't this video out yet? Well, we want to do something a little bit more in depth. We all want to use the camera. We all want to get feedback, especially for something new. There's a ton of YouTube videos out there that are first looks, and they're the specs, and you can go see those. We want to tell you exactly like what it is shooting this, and going out and shooting wildlife, shooting street, and then also doing some video stuff. And that's where like the audio testing is going to come into play. The Ozo Audio, it's this technology from Nokia that they originally had created, I believe, for cell phones. And the idea is it's the camera, like it's actually watching you where you're going and moving, and it's kind of moving where those mics are picking up from. And this is most apparent if you're behind the camera and you are narrating something, because you have full control of that. I believe it's a 360-degree mic that, like, let's say you're doing some crafting or you're cooking, for example, and you want to narrate kind of what you're doing. You can have it so it's just the mic that is picking up, and it's not the actual, the stuff, the splattering or whatever that you're cooking. Now, some would say, well, you could just take the microphone out and just point it towards you. Yes, but the nice thing about this camera is it does do a pretty good job with audio, with just the onboard audio. And that's something that I think across the board, as we recommend to customers coming in is, you have to get a microphone. You have to get a microphone. The onboard mics, the onboard preamps, like, they're not going to be good quality. And this is one of the first that I've seen that's actually, it's passable. I mean, it's not, is it going to be like a Rode, VideoMic Pro Plus? No. But for built-in, that you don't have to carry all this extra stuff, you just want to grab the camera and go out and vlog or photo or video. I think they did hit the mark here. Well, it'll be interesting to see kind of what the next chapter is, and how, as this gets into more people's hands, what we can expect from it. Anything to add to G100?
Actually, I wanted to make one more comment on this. Is the one thing I did love about Panasonic's was how they felt in the hand and how they worked. And I haven't had my hands on this camera, and you have. So I think that's a good sign that you really enjoyed shooting with it, because that was, to me, always one of the strengths of the Panasonic's, is they just felt right to me when I was using them. So maybe it's better than I'm thinking it is.
It's ergonomically, it fits better than the LX100 Mark II did. So it's not the full grip. Like, I would love to see it if they had like a pinky grip that would go on, and I feel like that would really add to it. But ergonomically, like, super simple to use. I mean, I think they did a good job with ergonomics on this one, for sure. Good. So moving on to our next one, and I'm going to lean heavily on you. So Fuji adds webcam mode to XA7 and XT2. So XT200. So now this is different, though, than the previous announcement, correct? This is something where it's actually in the camera itself, and it shows up as the actual name of the camera. Because I saw on some of the screenshots where it was like Fuji film camera for the webcam capture, but this actually is like showing up to the camera or to the computer as a webcam, correct?
Right. Which is, well, I'm a Fuji shooter, and to set up this podcast, I had to drive up to meet TJ to get the little Camlink plug-in for my HDMI port right over here, so that we could make this work, so that you can actually see me. And Fuji had announced, and so has, I believe, Canon and one other manufacturer.
Panasonic kind of has, but not really.
Shoot. I just lost my camera. I think it is overheating a little bit, so I'll keep talking about this one. So that's what I really like about this XA7 change is, and the the XT200, where though the other cameras I just mentioned need software for it to work. You have to run something on your computer. And I'm a Mac user, and the software isn't Mac compatible. It just seems like a much better idea to have something that will plug into the camera, and then the camera just shows up to your computer as if it was a webcam. And that's what they've done with this XA7 and XT200 firmware. And I'm kind of hoping they're going to do it for my XT4 that I have over here. It would be a great thing to have if they could do it for me.
And isn't that kind of interesting? Like, why did they start with these two cameras? I feel like these are, I don't want to say lower or bottom, but they're the kind of entry level cameras. Why do you think they switched to, started here and not out their flagship line? Do you think it was that more people can maybe afford these, so they could, that's where the need was most? Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's an excellent question that I am really just guessing. As a software guy, sometimes software is the issue. Or in this case, I'm thinking maybe hardware is the issue. Maybe there's something about the way they built the XA7 and the XT200 that lets it do the video out easier. But I'm just guessing. I'm not quite sure why Fuji would do this on the two low-end cameras. I do also have to add that the mint green XA7 is gorgeous, and this is weakening my willpower to not rush out and buy one to use as a video camera.
Right. Very cool. So then moving on to our next story, that is that the Sigma FP now supports 120 frames per second ProRes RAW. Oops, there we go. Make sure that's coming up. Well, the Sigma FP now supports 120 frames per second ProRes RAW, Blackmagic RAW, HDR video, and cinemagraphs with new firmware. So this is the latest firmware that has come out for the Sigma FP, which to me, the fact that they added those the features. I'm sorry, this was one of our slides that was giving us issues too, but the fact that they updated this with these specs, holy crap! I mean, the cinema DNG, that was kind of built in, but the fact that they're doing Blackmagic and ProRes RAW. So the idea behind the Sigma FP is this kind of modular, small form factor. Kind of build what you want in a camera. And it seems like they're continuing that now, even with software. Like they're not picking a side. They're not saying, no, we're doing ProRes RAW or we're doing Blackmagic RAW. They're saying, hey, whatever you want to create, we are the camera for you. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Right. Almost exactly what you're saying. I mean, it is a really, really small camera body that's basically nothing more than a box to hold the sensor and the lens. And the the quote I loved was Caleb Pike at the YouTube channel DSLR Video Shooter said, this camera is terrible, but I love it. Because of what he could see them doing, that it was the small box that as a video shooter you can build on. Video people tend to put cages and then start attaching things. This is what they want, is that small raw camera module to build off of. But it had some limitations. The video quality wasn't great coming out of it unless you shot their raw format. And their raw format was really good, but it took up a whole lot of space. And he said in that video, what I want is Blackmagic RAW. What I want is ProRes RAW, where they're a compressed format so I can actually use the good-looking files that come out of this camera. And Sigma did exactly that. They went out and they put the things that this camera needed. And I think that's a good sign that they will keep improving it as time goes on.
Absolutely. And it's kind of like going back in the day when you had a digital back and then you had a viewfinder and then you had your lens, and you can pick and choose from different companies, what you put on there. And that's what, between the L Mount Alliance and, the FP, that's exactly what they're doing. It's like, hey, you want PL glass? Put it on there. Do you want to bring your own director's viewfinder? Bring it on. Like, we don't care what we're the digital back. We are going to put all of our thought and effort into creating the best, smallest, lightest weight L mount, capture device out there. And that's what they just keep doing. And this was a huge firmware for them. So, hats off to the Sigma FP team for, this awesome firmware update. And this is something that other companies could possibly even charge for, you know what I mean? And they're just saying, nope, like, we're going to just put it out there and, you get access to it. They're constantly updating this over time. So hats off to Sigma for such a unique camera, and for having the courage to introduce a camera like that to the market and constantly improve it with specs that are just 120 frames per second raw. Like, that to me is nuts that they were able to push something like that out with just a firmware. So nice job, Sigma. So continuing on with our Sigma coverage, if you will, this is one that came out kind of not under the radar, but it really wasn't talked about too much. And that is these are the three Sigma lenses that are out for, I want to say Panasonic had them, and I want to say Canon. I don't know, but they're basically this trio
they were
of
Micro Four Thirds and Sony.
Micro Four Thirds and Sony. So now it's interesting that they've come out for the L mount. And you had messaged me and you were like, kind of like, why, what are these for? Is there a crop sensor L mount camera? So this opens up some speculation. First and foremost, there's the Leica CL, and that is a APS-C size camera that these will work perfectly on. But I don't see Sigma doing it just for them. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So is Sigma thinking about doing an APS-C camera, maybe with the Foveon sensor? That would be neat. Panasonic, I don't really think it makes sense for Panasonic to get into crop sensor cameras when they already have a very mature line with, they're micro four thirds. Another thing would be like for Panasonic cameras, like if you did want to like crop in, you could use these lenses because they are so much smaller. But I just this was an interesting one to me because I don't see the point, I guess, is the point I'm making, because it's only right now it's only for one camera, and that's the Leica CL mount. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. What are your thoughts?
Well, first I have to do my Jared Polin impression, although I can't do it the way he does. I would do it more like this. The L-Mount Alliance has a plan. And I think you're right. I think that this is the first shoe to drop where there's another shoe coming, where somebody in the L-Mount Alliance is going to put out APS-C camera. Now, I'm not sure why. I mean, like you said, I don't see a Leica user buying these lenses. These are meant to be inexpensive lenses that are, easy on the pocketbook and good quality, but not great quality. And that doesn't strike me as something that a Leica user would be looking for.
Right.
But is there a Foveon sensor Sigma coming? When you said that, my ears perked up. It's like, oh, hey, that might be worth it.
Because I remember, like, when the L-Mount Alliance first came out, I mean, there was talk of this, for them to do a Foveon. Everybody thought it was going to be a Foveon full frame sensor. And then when it came out as the, traditional Bayer sensor, like, it was, kind of interesting to me that, like, they were supposed to do Foveon, then they did regular. So in the back of my head, they still have that technology. Is it something that we're going to see in that smaller camera? I guess time will tell. And Tech Gear Talk says, let's get a trio of Fuji, please, Sigma. I think that, I agree. I think it would be nice to see, they already have the lenses. Like, why not just see some type of aftermarket support for Fuji lenses? That's I feel like that's the only one that doesn't really have great third-party support right now, would be, the Fuji F mount. I mean, they have a ton of lenses, and they're all great quality, so there's not a ton of holes in the line. But it would be nice to have, some other offerings for sure.
It's killing me. I have to step in on that one. Fuji has intentionally not released their lens mount. And Sigma has always said that's why they haven't done it. There's not enough of a Fuji market to be worth doing what they did with, say, Canon and reverse engineering the lens mount. But they've always said if Fuji ever opened up their lens mount and told us how it works, we'd be happy to make lenses for them. And as part of the pandemic news over the last couple months, Fuji has said that they are going to open up their mount. So I've got my fingers crossed. Maybe I will be getting some Sigma glass for my Fujis.
That would be awesome. So I want to move on to our next story. Couple fires wedding photographer demands refund over Black Lives Matter post. And this one is just, I'll let you start. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't have a whole lot to say about this other than awful people are going to be awful. And I feel for these photographers. My instinct would be to throw their money at them and say, well, I don't want your money then. But I'm not a professional photographer trying to work their way through a pandemic. I am, however, talking to someone who does a podcast about professional photography and is a professional photographer working through the pandemic. So, TJ, what do you think about this?
Yeah, so this one was interesting for me. So number one, in my business, I don't ever talk about politics. I mean, that's just kind of my, I don't really talk about either way. But for something like this is something that if you believe in and you want to, share that, of support of a national movement, I could see, you just have to plan for people not to agree with you. And unfortunately, that's what society has become. And it is truly unfortunate. If you say something very positive, someone's going to take that as, negative or against them. So me personally, I don't post a lot of political stuff. I don't at all. On any of my social media channels. But the way that this person replied to this photographer and saying that she was obviously unstable and just berated this poor photographer. And that's what just was unsettling to me. And that's, the key takeaway here is have good contracts, number one, and making sure that, you do have that clause. And I love how this photographer too, I wish you a lifetime of growth. And I would like to thank you for your donation to Black Lives Matter. So this photographer is actually taking the money of the deposit and she's not holding on to it. She's actually donating that money to the cause to further that cause. So, obviously, that then the client, you'll be hearing from our lawyer and back and forth. I mean, this isn't the end of this story. This is not, this is something that's going to continue on and on. But I do applaud the photographer for, having that contract set up. That is key. I mean, if you're doing anything, as a professional, you need to have the protection. Like, you need to have the contract that protects you from stuff like this. And, number two is, I applaud the photographer for not getting into, an angry back and forth with this person. I think that, again, well done. I think that, nothing but praise for the photographer. And this is an Ohio photographer as well, I believe, down near Cincinnati. And number three is, another thing that's circulating. I was looking at her page, and there's been, a negative kind of slam of this photographer, that she's just using this for, just to get publicity. And, as I read through like the comments, I don't feel like that's what it is. I mean, and that's what she says, is she's like, I don't want the publicity for this. Like, then just the fact that people are attacking me and saying this is just unsettling. And there's a lot of people that are supporting her. And I think that the photographer did all the right points, and I think it could have gone a totally different way. And like you said, awful people will always be awful. And I think that's a great way to segue into our next story here, which is the opposite of that, and that is something very positive. So it's not the headline. You're thinking, wait, am I watching last week's show? Didn't you guys talk about the Tamron 28 to 200 last week? We did, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to bring due attention where attention is due, and that is the author. If you notice that author on there, that is our very own Eeyore Balaban. So as we did some digging back, some research, we found that he's actually had over, I think, 12 articles published on Petapixel. So just wanted to, hats off to Eeyore for just doing such intense, in-depth write-ups of lenses and cameras. And you just have to realize, for us, a site like Petapixel, they pick up all the news. So they look at all the articles and say, okay, here was 10 articles that came out about the 28 to 200, and they look for what's going to be best for their readers. And they're continually looking to his write-ups for the different lenses and stuff that come out. So again, you can find all of the stuff that he writes over at our website at thepixelconnection.com, and then go to blog. But I just wanted to kind of call out that, he's doing such a great job at getting, all this information out there and just helping out the photographic community. So thank you, Eeyore.
Great job, Eeyore.
So let's move on to our education and tutorials block. It was a very busy week for one company, and that is Adobe. I don't know about you, but my Creative Cloud has been spinning with all of the updates. And honestly, I didn't even, I went home and I noticed that the icon had changed, and I was like, oh, it's automatically doing this. And that to me, we'll switch back there. That to me is just I don't mind paying the Adobe tax monthly when I just show up to, get to work, and it already has the newest, the latest, greatest version, and it's ready, it's ready to go. I mean, that's what you're paying that monthly fee for, is to, keep funding the developers to add on features, to, have all your stuff stay up to date and on all your computers. I mean, so props to Adobe for pushing out just a ton of awesome updates. And I think some of my favorites are some of the masking stuff that they did, adding that to Lightroom, and as well as the ISO variants. So it's actually going to look at the ISO of how it was, how the photograph was taken, and then apply a certain amount of sharpness and other settings based on that ISO variable. So what were some of yours? And I know you had some stuff update as well.
Yeah, the first thing I was just checking is right before we started, I noticed the little red dot on my Adobe Creative Cloud, so I've got to go figure out what else I didn't download. But the one thing I saw, other than what you mentioned, the color masking or adjusting colors within a mask, is something I've wanted for a while, so I was thrilled to see that. I used Lightroom Sync pretty heavily a couple years ago when I went on a trip to Italy, a food trip for my blog, and I did some testing, and the Lightroom Sync was a great way to get the photos back home and to let me use my iPad as my only computer on the trip. I didn't have to lug around my MacBook. I was able to bring the little iPad. It synced through the cloud. Everything was synced to back up right here on my computer on my desk. It was a great experience. It's just that the interface was really clunky, and I was always having a hard time figuring out what it was doing. And it looks like they've cleaned a lot of that up. So I'm hoping that it'll be even easier to use now.
It is, and that's where, you mentioned the sync, and in the notes, you're like, I really don't know where this stuff is. It just works. And that's one thing that I've
Yep.
been working through this week is those Lightroom sync files were actually saved to the, C. They weren't on the external drive, and,
Yep.
it was just a mess. So I've been working through that this week and getting everything to where I tell it to go. So I did want to point out that you can go into your Lightroom preferences and set the mobile sync files and where they actually save to. But yeah, they even updated the R5, compatibility for the R5. So even cameras that aren't even out yet,
Yep.
they pushed out updates for Premiere. So that way on day one, that camera is going to be all that footage, all that is going to be ready to rock and roll. So props to Adobe for their summer of 2020 updates. And there was hundreds of updates that were updated across the spectrum, not just Photoshop, not just Lightroom, was across the entire Creative Cloud. So if you haven't updated or you haven't looked for updates, go up to that little Creative Cloud icon and take a look.
The one other one I did want to call out, it's not one I've used much, but in Photoshop, they improved the machine learning, the artificial intelligence behind select subjects. And the demos I saw made it look like you can just click and say, I want to select this person in the middle of the picture. And they had a woman with hair that was being blown in the wind and flying everywhere. And it got her immediately outlined. It was pretty impressive.
Excellent. So there's another software that was, kind of in the news this week, and that is Keanu. Keanu lets you visually explore all the photos on your Mac or iPhone. So, I was pretty excited about this when I first saw it. Anything that, any imaging software that comes out that allows you to quickly go through or find images that, because I'm always looking for things to, recommend to other folks that don't want to pay for the Photoshops of the world or the Lightrooms of the world. They don't want to pay that kind of monthly fee, and that's where that's why I threw this in there as kind of a nice visual way to see all your photos. And you downloaded it, correct? You played with it a
Yes,
little
I
bit.
did. Let
So
me share
what are
my
the
screen.
Yeah, for sure. And this
And
is on iPhone and Mac OS, if I remember correctly.
correct. And can you see it? I got to move it so
Yes.
I can see. Okay, good. So you
I mean,
can
it looks
see,
pretty cool.
yeah, it looks amazing, and it's a beautiful view of my pictures. But beyond that, I'm not quite sure what it's supposed to do for me. It groups by colors. So I guess if I want to see all the pictures I took, like I was in San Francisco here, and this looks like when I was in Maine, and this is Lake Erie over here, I can remember. But other than a really nice mosaic, it's it's not very fast. As you can probably see right now, I'm
Yeah.
got nothing, but
Oh,
it'll
they have a
eventually catch
Minecraft
up
mode.
here.
That's cool.
Exactly. if your kids are Minecraft fans, and in theory, if I click on a picture, I can arrow through the other ones. I don't know if you can hear me clicking my keyboard, but I'm kind of stuck on this one. My only way to pick the one next to it is to go back out to the main menu and try to find it. And it's not a very efficient way to move things around. Oops, and there's a
So this
very
is one of those
uneven
ones
shot
that
of
we're going to
Venice.
have to stay tuned, because I think that there is a lot of potential here to grow this into a raw editor or presets, kind of create that image manipulator. But right now it's kind of half baked, if you will.
Right. The other big downside to it, I'm assuming most of the people on this call are professional or at least serious amateur photographers. This will only read from your Apple Photos library. You can't point it at Lightroom. You can't point it at Capture One. You can't point it at a folder that has pictures. It's got to be in Apple Photos. So on your iPhone, this might be a useful way to scroll through things. But for me, this is all of my personal-ish photos, and my professional ones are all in a Lightroom library, and it can't see them.
That is unfortunate. Yeah, you'd have to export like all of them into a folder, like a watch folder or something, and that's just not helpful at all. So the next thing in our tutorials roundup is 15 stunning photos from this year's Milky Way Photographer of the Year. And look at those photos. They're just so awe-inspiring. And this is one thing that I just haven't, like, I've done like one astro photo shoot is all, and I've gotten like 2 photos from it. And then I look at stuff like this and like the ice climbers and just it's awe-inspiring. That's all I'm gonna say. Like even like the little half pipe photo that's on the bottom right there. I mean, even that is, super unique, and like it just the composition is just awesome. So we really just wanted to put those in here as kind of a form of inspiration for, doing some of your own astro work, if you will. So also I wanted to call attention to last Wednesday, we actually did a whole live stream with Sean Robinson from Panasonic, and he shared some astrophotography tips. So, and it was all about backyard astrophotography. So if you're interested in, doing some astrophotography, then definitely take a look at that video that we did a little while back. Actually, last Wednesday is when we did it. So also, I wanted to let you know that all of our videos are actually up on our YouTube channel. So anything that we have talked about over the last, we were doing like 5 shows a week, and all of those are available up on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com/, The Pixel Connection, and you'll be able to find all of the videos that we had done live streamed over the last couple months. So this is our rumor roundup. So getting started, Nikon Z5 will have a 24 megapixel sensor, dual card slots, and in-body image stabilization. So, this to me is interesting because we're starting to hear, some of the R6 rumors as well. And it looks like the Z5 is actually shaping up to be a pretty good looking camera. 24 megapixel, love it. Dual card slots, have to have it in 2020, and in-body image stabilization. So to me, is the Z5 going to be their new frontline camera? Because those are pretty good. We'll see what happens on, with video specs and frames per second and all that. But kind of at first cut, I feel like this could be a frontline camera. What do you think?
So I think this and the other rumored Sony A5 are their Canon RP killers, where Canon came out with that great deal in that low-end full-frame camera, and this is Nikon's cut at that market, and I think Sony's about to make a cut at that market, and it seems like that RP is a great deal. I am admittedly a bit of a gear addict, and it tempted me. It also feels like this is where the market's going, where this is going to become the new low-end cameras. The new Canon Rebel is the RP. This is going to be, the equivalent of the Nikon 3000 or 5000 series, maybe going forward in the
And that's what I
mirrorless
was going
world.
to ask. Do you see it just going? Do you see them just going into, mirrorless only and not having any of the mirrored cameras around? Do you see them just going to full frame mirrorless, like on the Canon side? Like, do you think they're just going to kind of discontinue the M line or keep the M line? What do you think?
Yeah, the M line is an odd duck, and I'm not sure. I feel like Canon's going to keep the EF stuff around because so many of those lenses are out there now. And if nothing else, you can adapt it to the Canon Rs really easily. But the M, yeah, I don't know. Again, there's that. Again, I shoot APS-C. I love the Fuji mainly because it doesn't have these big honking lenses. And so I'm hoping that the APS-C size stays around. Tongue twister there. But yeah, it feels like everyone's moving towards full frame, and this may be both Nikon and maybe Sony's step that way.
Right. It'll be interesting to see how it keeps going, if they're just going away from APS-C altogether, or if they're just going to go away from mirrored altogether. So our next one is the A7S III announcement, delayed again until mid-July is the report. So does this matter? Like, does this camera even exist? Like, what would it have to even exist? I mean, I don't see Sony resting on their laurels and letting, Canon come out with this video beast, Panasonic with the S1H, again, killing it with video, killing it with low light. And our current A7S offering is so many years behind that, this thing's going to have to just be, I mean, 16K. I don't know. Like, what does it even have to do? Like, if you look at the R5, how are they going to one up the R5 with the specs that have been announced? I mean, S1H with, it's a Netflix certified camera. So, I mean, it definitely has the chops in the video area. It has amazing low light performance, great dynamic range. Like, what is the A7S going to have? You know what I mean? What for them to even come out with it?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I mean, and there's a part of me that is like, well, I've been burned so many times with A7S2 rumors, or A7S3, I would guess the successor, because the A7S2 came out in 2015 with the R2 and the A2, and it feels like every 6 months this rumor comes back. It's coming. Now, this time it feels like it's realer than most. Allegedly, it has been in the hands of camera shops, and people have actually held it.
Right.
But yeah, what does it have to do? I mean, if they had released it 2 or 3 years ago when it was scheduled, now it's got to beat that SH1, and that the rumored Canon R6 specs are killer. And what is it going to do? I mean, like you said, 16K, 12K, 8K, it's going to have to be a monster.
And that's too, like I saw the R6 specs come out this week as well. And even that has up-resed 5K. I mean, and that's coming in at less, a sub, I think $2,500 is what the rumors are saying. So, with the A7S II, it was at the top end of the price spectrum for the Sony A7 line. So, now you're going to have a camera that's more expensive than all the other ones. And if it comes out with lackluster specs, I worry, because that is a camera that, the A7S II I've made a lot of money with, especially as a wedding shooter at receptions. I mean, it did a great job at low light, great job with focus. And there's still people that rent that camera from the store today. So, I am hopeful that they do come out with some awesome features, or, even if they just fix, or listen to the feedback of the users of, fully articulating screen, or, overheating, maybe they throw a fan in it. There are simple ergonomic things that would just, for a filmmaker, that would be, excellent to have, that they wouldn't even have to have all the technical, like I said, 12K or 8K or whatever. I mean, they could be happy with, even 4K. Give us 4K, 60 frames per second, unlimited recording, good heat dissipation, good upgrade to the menu systems would be great. Fully articulating screen. I mean, I can go on and on for little things that they could put out there, and I think it would pacify that A7, group of people, or the people that are lusting after, the A7S II replacement. So it'll be interesting to see. I did see that article too, where it was in camera stores' hands, and I was like, what's a guy got to do? To get hands on with a camera like this? Like, why
are they holding out on you, TJ?
And I'm not. Yeah, I'm a little upset about it. I'm not gonna lie. I am a dynamic content creator. Can't you see that, Tony? No, not at all. I understand why they wouldn't want to. It's totally fine. I'll read the rumors with you guys, because then I have full plausible deniability, which is great.
Right. Yeah, and my other comment on this is, you're right, that's what they should do. Is they should just put out a good video camera that, that's a Sony, the new bigger battery, better ergonomics, better heat distribution, unlimited recording. But after all this time of waiting and all these rumors, they're going to be crucified in the press if they don't have, some monster Godzilla camera. And I hope that they don't get too into their own heads about that, and they just release what they have, because Sony video shooters sure could use an update to that camera.
Absolutely. So the Fujinon GF 30mm f3.5 coming soon for $1699. So you're a Fuji shooter, albeit not the GFX. At least I don't think the GFX. So
Sadly,
is this
no.
a big deal? So, like, why is this focal length important? Is it the price? Is it the focal length? I mean, is this a macro lens? Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah. Well, this is the Fuji medium format's 24mm f2.8 equivalent. This is what I consider the standard wide zoom, the standard wide lens. everybody needs a 24 millimeter in their lineup, and this is it for the Canon system. And I just lost my light, so I'll keep talking and fix that in a second. They're just rounding out their lineup. They are slowly but surely releasing lenses for the GFXs, and they needed this one. It's one every camera system has to have. I don't have a GFX. They're amazing cameras, but again, the size issue for me. I like the Fuji X size, and that's part of why I switched to it. Is the lenses are manageable to me. They're not the huge monsters, especially like the Canon R glass you're getting. It looks gorgeous, but it's huge, and the GFX has the same issue. That big sensor needs a big lens.
Right, and I do like that on this one. They they are showing it with the GFX, the 50R, and on that camera, it doesn't look very large. Like if this is an actual, if this isn't a Photoshop rendering, it looks like it's a good balance on even the smaller GFX camera, which I think is going to be welcome to. Not having, like, I got the GFX 50R to demo, to test, and when I was first doing more, like I said, the food photography stuff, and like I took 3 or 4 photos with it, I'm like, this thing is huge. Like I love the images that I'm getting from it. Like, holy crap, like the resolution is just to die for. And it wasn't too big that you couldn't take it out and shoot with it, but it would be like a traditional, like the 5D4, for example. I feel like it's on this, it's like feeling wise, it's about the same size. But for this, I mean, now they're doing, it looks like a smaller lens, looks affordable. $16.99 for a medium format lens, I think is excellent. So it's awesome to see Fuji, keeping both lines, and they constantly are hitting it out of the park this year with X100V and then XT4. I mean, they've had a couple other announcements mixed in as well, and they're pushing forward. And companies putting out products like this, or us hearing about announcements like this, just give me a little bit of hope to what's to come, and getting a little bit closer to normal. So awesome to see Fuji push through with that.
Yeah, and I am still waiting for them to announce that 50 F1. Please,
hopefully soon. So jumping into Pixel Photo Fest, so there was some change of plans, and you might look at this and say, TJ, I thought it was only on one day. You would be correct, but guys, we listened to you, and we are doing our part to try to get even more content for this. We had people that still wanted to get out and do photo walks, so that is something that we are working on. But as of right now, what is concrete is the fact that it's happening on August 15th, and it's a hybrid event. So it's going to be during the morning. I'm going to have a ton of live streams just like this one. And then we have a hands-on shooting demonstration with James Schmelzer, where he's going to be in the vaults at the 9. If you haven't heard of the vaults or you haven't been down there, it is an awesome place that is kind of exclusive to shoot. I mean, if you're going to do wedding photographs there, like you have to get special permission and pay to be down there. We've rented out the entire facility for photographers, and we're going to have a model bank there. We're going to have him teaching and training on lighting. Like, it's going to be an awesome hands-on experience, and that goes from 5 to 7. And then from 7 to 9, you can either hang out in the vault, or you can come up to the rooftop bar and, continue to photograph, or put the camera away and just hang out with fellow photographers. Again, we still want to do the education. We still want to do the hands-on. We still want to do the networking. And this is our way forward when we found out that our venue was not allowed to have us anymore. So we've been scrambling a little bit, and we just ask for, your understanding as we make changes and we have to go with the flow at this point. But everybody's tickets that registered this year, they automatically get rolled over to next year. So if you do, there's still a couple days that you can use code Lunch and Learn to save $100. So what you get with that Lunch and Learn code is you get this year's all day hybrid conference, where you can come down if you want to, or just watch from the comfort of your own home. You get full access to next year's as well. And then as long as the speaker allows, we're going to have recordings from all of those presentations as well. So for $90, you are getting a pretty big, it's a lot for $100, in my opinion. I think that you're getting a lot of education, and you're still locked in for next year. So again, code Lunch and Learn will help you save that $100. So I did want to talk about another thing that we have going on, and that is our free Fuji rental program. So we have some XT3s in there. We have some lenses, the X100V, the X Pro 3, We might even have an XT4 in there. I don't know. But you can find out more by going to rentals.thepixelconnection.com. We're doing the free rentals. We're also doing Fujifilm Tech Time. So if you go to that URL right there, that Fujifilm all products, you'll actually be taken to a place where you can sign up for Fuji Tech Time. And I believe that you took advantage of that recently, correct?
Yes, I did.
And what was your thought on that?
Well, the first thing I want to say is when you go to that link, there is a red button on the right side of the screen, a little down, which kind of looks like the other red button. So it took me a little while to find it. So make sure you look for the Fuji Tech Time button when you go through there. I called them about this setup. I had some questions about how to get set up to shoot a live video using my X-T4, and they were very helpful. So I'm glad I did it. And I also got a couple of coupon codes towards Fuji products at Pixel while I did it. So that's a nice bonus.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you took advantage of that, and I'm glad that Fuji was nice enough to put something like that together for us. Sony is also doing Tech Time. This is coming up, I believe, on the 30th. Again, if you need more information, just reach out to social@thepixelconnection.com. But you can talk with a Sony expert online. So if you do have questions about Sony cameras, if you are wondering, how to, turn on back button autofocus, for example, or you just don't know what lens to get next, they're signing you up for 30-minute complimentary consultation times with somebody from Fuji proper. So it's somebody that knows the product inside and out. So I wanted to just let everybody know about that going forward. And I want to say they're all happening on the 30th. And if you go to our website, you'll be able to find out more information about that. So as we come to a close, Mr. Mike Vrobel, where can people find you if they want to follow you online?
dadcooksdinner.com.
Absolutely. And that's also the Instagram handle as well. And be prepared, though. I mean, you're going to get hungry. I mean, you're going to see this food, and especially the stuff recently. I'm like bookmarking the recipes. So that way I don't have I have a regular pressure cooker, but I don't have the what's the other, the Instapot?
Instant Pot. Yep.
Yeah. So I've been bookmarking these, and I know I can do it with a regular pressure cooker. I get that. But this is a way for me to talk my wife into letting me get an Instapot. So I've been bookmarking all these things and saying, hey, I want to cook this. Doesn't this look delicious? And her saying yes, and then me buying the Instant Pot. So thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, everybody, for kind of sticking along. Some things popped up over here on the right hand side that they all like came in at once. So Jim Summers, really bummed, was going to New Mexico next month to do the Milky Way photography, but going to have to cancel. That sucks. I'm sorry to hear that, man. Observatory Park in Montville is a great place to test your Milky Way skills.
Oh, thank you, Jim.
That's a very, very good tip. Finally, dual card slots. So yes, coming up, because yes, you are a Nikon shooter. So I guess I didn't make that connection that you were probably holding back on the Z6 and Z7 because of the dual card slots. Just broke my D750. This could be something to look at closely. Ooh, sorry to hear that, Jim. If there's anything that we can do, give us a holler. We'll try to find something to do for you. And Tech Gear Talk, got to jump on a Zoom. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much, Tech Gear Talk.
Thank you.
If you do need absolutely anything from us here at the store, we are here to help you. You can reach out to sales or social at thepixelconnection.com. Follow us along on Instagram at the.pixel.connection, or on Facebook, just search for The Pixel Connection. So thank you guys so much for joining us today, and I hope you have an awesome rest of the week. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.